in the house, we have Counsel Ellison Karuhanga. Is a partner at Kampala Associated Advocates, KAA. Ellison, say hello to the viewer.
Good evening, viewers, and thank you very much for having me here, Charles. I think it's going to be...
It's good to have you here, and for most of you, I think, on your maiden appearances. It's good to have you, Ellison. We have Mr. Kamulegea Francis. He is country senior partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers Uganda, and a member of the Pricewaterhouse Africa Governance Board. Francis, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here.
Good. On my extreme left, we have the man who is causing ruffles around the country and is ruffling feathers, and he doesn't need so much introduction by name, but save for those who are seeing him on TV maybe for the first time. Fred Muema is a senior lawyer and managing partner of Muema and Company Advocates. Fred, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles, but I'm not causing nothing. It's the law that is causing ruffles, as you say.
You are the law.
I'm
is
happy to
nothing.
be here, though.
The law without faces is nothing. That's what they told us at law school. Yeah. So you are the one who is leading the law to cause trouble, but it's good trouble.
Thank you.
This kind of trouble is good. We are going to be discussing things to do with the economy, the law, the politics, if you like, but especially, more especially business. We also have our panel member, Mr. Ramadan Gobi is here with us. Ramadan, you must be in familiar territory this evening.
Not so familiar. Thank you very much for calling this panel today of these senior lawyers and a very good veteran analyst of these issues. So I'm today in a very comfortable seat. You can see as if I'm in my living room.
Good. It's good to have you back. We are missing Honorable Abdou Katuntu today because he is, I must say, Abdou Katuntu has done a U-turn and is now going to run as of this morning. Is going to be nominated either tomorrow or Friday to run for to defend his constituency seat, which is Bugweri County, and that's probably one of the reasons why he cannot be with us here. He's mobilizing back in the constituency. Politics is good to, is good to participate in. We will be joined, if nothing goes wrong, with the network and or technology. We are going to be, I expect to be joined by Twinemanzi Tumubwene, who is the Bank of Uganda Executive Director in charge of bank supervision, but that line is still having issues, as well as Honorable Margaret Muhanga, but the technical team is trying to work on that. Now, the discussion, as by now you all know, social media is awash with the judgment in the Hamis Chigundu case, or Ham versus DTB Uganda and DTB Kenya. And we will be looking at those discussions. We will be looking mainly at the implications. What does it mean for the economy? What does the ruling mean for business? What does the ruling mean going forward for, regulations involving, money markets and all that kind of thing? That's why the big guns are here, starting with Francis Kamulegea himself, a tax expert. We will be discussing all those implications here and starting right now. Let me begin. Let me not take anything for granted, because someone might have just come. Fred, start us off by just in 1 minute, just summarize for us what exactly took you to court to defend Ham and others in that case, without going into the legal details for now. We want to just
the facts. I think let me start with a popular misstatement
Yeah.
which attaches to this case, which is that the banks, Diamond Trust Bank Uganda and Diamond Trust Bank Kenya, made a claim for money, for payment of a loan to harm. That is not true. There is no such case that the bank brought against harm in court claiming for money.
Yeah.
So the simple fact is that it is harm
Who went to
who
court?
went to court claiming for payment of money arising from unlawful debits, withdrawals, unexplained, issues with his account.
Why don't you use simple terms like withdrawal of money from his account? You know, when you say debit, my grandmother in the village who is watching might not understand.
Okay, Ham was saying money was stolen from his account. I think that everybody knows that. So Ham says that over a period of 10 years, on various accounts, up to $23 million was taken off his account and 34 billion shillings. So he goes to court to seek a refund of this amount. But at the time he's going to court, the banks were making a demand. They were also making a demand for what they said was $4.5 million US. That's Diamond Trust Bank Kenya claiming, and Diamond Trust Bank Uganda was claiming $6 million, which they say were facilities given to him sometime 2018, 2017, and were unpaid. So by the time Ham Enterprises goes to court, it had written to the bank to state that, look, based on our taking of an account, we see that it is actually us demanding money from you. If you say you're demanding 10, we are actually demanding 3-4 times that. So can we do a reconciliation, a set-off, and you give me my title? So Ham declares to the bank that, look, you're paid, I now want my titles. So that's how the dispute begins. That's how Ham ends up in court, and that's how we are here.
Good. And so the ruling was made. Tell us, in your words, what is the implication to the banking sector?
First of all, what ruling was made? Many people have said the case didn't go to full trial. I think people are used to witnesses coming, swearing, and lawyers cross-examining. That's not the only form of a hearing in a court of law. This hearing proceeded upon us raising a technical objection, a point of law, to the defense of the bank.
Yeah.
The banks filed a joint defense.
Yeah.
So we did what they call a preliminary objection and applied to strike out or to dismiss the defense.
The defense.
You know, Charles, in court you can apply to dismiss a plaintiff, the case for the plaintiff or defense, without a hearing.
Yes.
And the law allows that.
Yes.
You do that if you can show that the defense is incompetent or worthless, because a court does not sit to waste its time. If you have no defense, it chases you with your papers and stays with one party. So what happened is that we applied to strike out the defense of the banks on grounds of illegality.
Yes. Which the judge agreed with.
Which the judge agreed with. And what was the illegality? We claimed successfully that Diamond Trust Bank Kenya, being a foreign bank, had conducted financial institutions business in Uganda without a permission or a license, and therefore its transaction was illegal.
Yeah.
And the court agreed with us.
Yeah.
And then also we claimed that Diamond Trust Bank Uganda, though being licensed to conduct financial institution business, had also committed acts of illegality of acting as an agent of a foreign bank, in other words, facilitating a foreign bank to violate the Financial Institutions Act, which in total was also an illegal act, and therefore we submitted successfully that the fact that the defense was tainted with illegality or had illegality could not stand.
Okay.
So on that basis, the court, having dismissed the defense, the court then had only harm left in court. And it had to consider what harm was asking for, which was payment of the monies I mentioned,
Yeah.
$23 million and 34 billion shillings. People have said variously where I have been moving. They have been saying, okay, after dismissing the defense, the court should have had a hearing again. Edison will tell you here that in deserving cases, if you have gone to court asking for a specific amount of money, in this case, Ham went to court with an accounts of this size, 1,000, 2,000 pages, showing the different entries of how money was going off the account. And so the court did not need to call a hearing. It just gave judgment straight in a summary manner. And so one of the things, Charles, that people keep raising, which is of interest, is that, okay, the court having found that the credit facilities were illegal, how come it then gives Ham money?
Yeah.
So I need to clarify that Ham's claim for the $23 million and the refund of the 34 billion was not based on the credit facilities. And therefore, if the credit facilities were found to be illegal, they did not affect his claim for a refund. Because Ham's refund was in respect of 10 years, whereas the credit facilities that we're talking of were only for a period of about 2 years.
Yeah.
So the illegality, in our view, that affected the credit facilities did not affect the claim of Ham.
Okay. Counsel Ellison, do you agree with all the facts as reflected by your colleague to the left right now? Are those facts as outlined correct?
Once again, thank you very much, Charles,
Yeah.
for inviting us here. It is really an honor to be on this panel with people with such gravitas discussing such an important matter. I cannot say one or the other if the facts are right or wrong, because I was not a lawyer in that case.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that the judgment has certainly had a very far-reaching implication,
Yeah.
both substantially and procedurally. And
So start from there with the substantially, in terms of the legal ramification as it came out. What does it imply?
the judgment has a number of substantial implications in the nature and conduct of financial institution business in Uganda. One of the issues in this case was whether Diamond Trust Bank Kenya, at least from as gleamed from the judgment, was conducting financial institution business in Uganda.
We are all wearing masks, Ellison, sorry for interrupting you. So you can just remove a bit, since we are keeping social distance. You can remove your mask so that you're clearer, since all of us here are wearing. When someone is talking and another is wearing, we can be safe when you are.
Okay, I hope I'm clearer now.
Yeah, yeah.
The banks were, sorry, the point I was making is that one of the big issues in this case was whether Diamond Trust Bank is conducting Diamond Trust Bank Kenya,
Yeah.
by entering into a credit relationship with Ham Enterprises Limited, was conducting financial institutions business in Uganda.
Yeah.
And whether as a foreign bank it was required by law to register a representative office in Uganda. Actually, that it was required to register a representative office in Uganda and ensure that this facility is regulated. One of the big issues I think the judgment raised was that that type of lending is unregulated in Uganda. And of course the impact of that I think has been felt far and wide. We have seen statements from the Bank of Uganda, from the Bankers Association, from the Ministry of Finance, all feeling the impact of this judgment. So it's certainly an earth-moving judgment. It forces financial institutions, lawyers, lenders council, it forces everybody to sit down, look at the judgment, discuss it, rethink it, and it's the sort of case that certainly will benefit from another judicial opinion. I've seen appeals are being presented and prepared. But the impact of the case on the nature of financial institutions' business can't really be overstated. Of course, there are certain things which we need to correct. For example, this judgment there was no syndicated loan here.
There was no syndicated loan?
No, at least from what I got from the judgment. There was no syndicated loan here, and syndicated lending is not illegal. However, the principles behind syndicated lending may well be affected.
Yeah.
The principle of the foreign entity lending. Now, there are those who put it more simply and say, does the judgment mean that it is illegal for a Ugandan to borrow abroad? Because fundamentally, if Harm Enterprises went into Nairobi and convinced a credit manager in Diamond Trust Bank Kenya to lend them money, is that illegal? And these are some of the really legal and substantial questions that the Court of Appeal and maybe even the Supreme Court at a later stage may have to answer to settle this matter one way or the other if appeals are pursued. So in that regard, it is a judgment that has had a substantial effect on the financial services sector in this country. There is an argument that the definition of financial institution may well have actually been widened by the judgment. The Financial Institutions Act defines a financial institution as one that is carrying out financial institutions business in Uganda. And in 2016, that act was amended to limit that the definition of financial institutions business to lending, I think it was to offering credit or lending facilities, lending on money held in deposit.
Yes.
So if a bank has money in deposit in Uganda and it lends, previously, before 2016, all that manner of lending was considered financial institutions business. In 2016, an amendment was introduced to limit that to saying that the money by mortgage credit or by customer or by consumer credit must be money held on deposit.
Yeah.
There is an argument, of course, that this judgment may have had the effect of widening that definition. And that's something that I think we shall certainly be exploring through this show.
This discussion, yeah. Through
this discussion. There is also an argument that, but fundamentally I think what we need to encourage is the idea that credit is in danger is something that the necessary institutions are genuinely and correctly worried about. The economy does run in large part on credit. And the purpose of outsourcing credit or going for syndication also needs to be understood. The reason why we syndicate is because of our, what is called the single obliger limit, which is a bank cannot lend more than 25% of its core capital. The reason why bank lending is limited is so that depositors' money is protected.
Yes.
If I take my money to a bank and I want to withdraw it the very next day, it should not be threatened by the fact that someone else has
already overborrowed.
Has overborrowed and has not repaid.
Yeah.
So in order to tighten the rope, we have seen many things, but one of them is the single obliger limit, saying that the bank can't lend more than 25% of its core capital. If you look at Uganda, I think the largest bank, the largest bank has about, I think Francis or Ramadan may have better figures on this, but it's about 700 billion shillings, 770 billion
That's
shillings.
big.
Yes. That means that very few Ugandan banks, or hardly any bank, can singularly lend a $50 million facility to a single borrower. Now, a 50 million...
It's too high.
Yeah.
Even 10 is a problem.
Yeah, but in the whole of Uganda, however big your business is, I mean, if you're building Bujagali, you know Ugandan bank can lend you to build Bujagali, can lend you to complete Kampala Jinja Expressway. You can't go as a contractor to the commercial banks and get the sort of facilities to do the oil projects in Uganda.
Or even Karuma.
Or even Karuma. Because Uganda, by having its largest bank being unable to lend you more than just $50 million, for example, shows you that we are a net importer of capital.
Yeah.
And capital is a coward. It only goes where it grows.
Yeah.
And if we put too many limits on the importation of capital, we are more likely to be strangling ourselves.
Okay.
And that is the danger that some see from the ruling. Now, that does not mean, however, that, and it doesn't mean that we need to get this ruling and make all manner of conclusions from it. The judicial process is a long and laborious process. It will look through this thing, and if at all that decision is properly grounded in law, it will be upheld. If it isn't, it will be overturned. The reason why appellate courts exist is so that questions of this nature
can be asked.
And definition questions. This is, I think, the second or maybe even the first case. One of them was on mobile money, so maybe it wasn't applicable.
Wasn't it the same colleague of yours to the left?
Well, that's another matter.
It was the same gentleman, right?
Well, that's another matter. Yes, it
we
was.
shall touch on it after, towards the end. We shall just touch on it briefly because another problem has happened also in mobile money.
We were in it, but the point is,
yes,
this may well be a definition. Every once in a while, there are those cases that come that are definitional in nature, where you've been playing in a certain field, operating in a certain way, but the acts that have been happening have never been subjected to the scrutiny of the judiciary to render an opinion.
Which is why I was also going to make a follow-up with the question that are we not analyzing by cowardice? Because most of you, from my following and observation, or even the public following the responses or the reaction to the ruling, it appears to be the guys in the money market, the Bank of Uganda, the Kamulegeas, and he's soon going to tell us whether he's part of them, you know, the banking industry, they are all scared and not bothered about the fact that maybe probably there was a problem in the banking industry in the first place. Isn't that a problem? Shouldn't we say, okay, let's welcome the ruling, accept that the judge did a good thing, if he did a good thing in our analysis, and then say, should we not self-correct?
Obviously, as I said, capital is a coward.
Yeah.
It goes where it grows. And if you are going to put too many limits on it, it will fly away.
Okay.
That's why we have the statement, capital flight.
Yeah.
Capital flies away. There are very few chaotic entrepreneurs. There are very few people who benefit from a situation that is undefined, that is chaotic, that is... business doesn't require revolution, in order to grow. So from that sense, the feeling is dangerous. The feeling is not dangerous per se, but you need to understand where the money people are coming from.
Okay.
The second thing you need to understand is that most money is held in trust for somebody else. Pension funds operate money of pensioners. Equity funds operate money of people who hold money in equity funds. Banks hold depositors' money. If Diamond Trust Bank Uganda, for example, is so greatly affected by this ruling that it affects its core capital, it may find it difficult tomorrow to lend to someone else and may put very many stringent conditions on me, a third-party borrower, who had nothing to do with this case. So that's another challenge. So those are the two challenges. However, to the core of your question, shouldn't we just look at the ruling and self-correct if there's something that is wrong? Like I've said, this is a definitional ruling. It's a landmark ruling. It's a ruling that has got people speaking justifiably because it's a definitional ruling. It's a foundation. It's a ruling on the foundation of a building, telling you to pull down the building. These sort of rulings usually will get second and third judicial opinions. What you can credit the judge for is for opening the door for us to discuss what is a financial institution, and what is the bedrock. And once this question is well settled, I'm sure even the capital will settle. I think we shouldn't worry that capital is worried, because capital is naturally worried anyway, but we need to ensure that we are managing the expectations of those people who are investing in our businesses.
Okay, let me come to the man who looks at the figures from the banking sector, the tax elements and all that. Mr. Kamulegea, first status, I need you to help the public first to start by understanding what is this financial syndication, that animal, financial syndication. It has been so much talked about during this week following the ruling. Start us from that, and then, is it legal? To what extent has it been done before? Which does it happen normally?
All right, thank you very much, Charles, and once again, good evening, viewers. I think Ellison has talked very briefly about syndication, but in a very, very simplistic terms, syndication involves different lenders and financial institutions getting together to pool resources to finance a single borrower. It's also very important also to put it into context of what it means for our country as economy. I'll just talk about the National Development Plan. The National Development Plan is one of the key pillars of our policy in terms of industrialization, economic transformation, and our aspirations of becoming a middle-income economy. The NDP talks about funds, both from the public and the private sector, close to about 348 trillion Uganda shillings. In the year 2020 to 2026, government expects to spend in this economy, both from its own resources and from the private sector, 348, or a number to that tune. Let's talk about the banking sector in Uganda. The banking sector in Uganda, I think, based on the most recent report from Bank of Uganda, total depositors' money is about 24 trillion. That is about 85% of all the total liabilities. When I say liabilities, the total money that is held in banks. So, Charles, when you said, are banks getting scared about this? This thing is not about banks. This thing is about all of us. If a bank is unable to pay a depositor because of a bad loan, which has been occasioned by even a judgment of this kind, because I would imagine, without getting to the legalities and facts, that whatever the bank was doing was to recover money, either lent, including interest or advances. You know, you cannot just go to somebody's account and take away money, but the lawyers are dealing with that. All I know is that banks take money from us, depositors. All of us seated here have got money in the bank, and even before you walk out, they've given that money to somebody else. Now, the concept of syndication involves different financial institutions getting together because of various reasons. One is the single obligor limit, 2 is the risk appetite, 3, the size of the balance sheet, and 4, just sharing out risks. Bujagali is a project in the public domain. It costed close to $900 million. You've just heard the biggest bank's balance sheet is about 200 or thereabout million. So even 50% of that balance sheet could not even fund 10% of Bujagali. So IFC, an international development financial institution, came together with other, what they call the bilateral, multilateral lenders. They were able to raise about 500 million. So 4 banks, if not 5, if I remember correctly, syndicated in this market, including foreign banks, to raise $115 million. That was in 2007. The most recent one that you might be aware of is the Umeme investment in distribution and various capital, and that is a requirement, by the way, as per the concession. A lot of these are in the public domain. You know, roofings. You know, we are now manufacturing, you know, steel bars and all sorts of things that we used to import. That was a $64 million syndication by 5 banks. 2-3 years ago, I think we had MTN on the investment in the infrastructure for the 4G. So it is a norm in financing, and it is not just here in Uganda, it is everywhere in the world. Secondly, or thirdly, the country, our country, is a capital importing country. And whatever the laws say and whatever the interpretations are, I strongly believe that laws were made for man.
True.
And man was not made for law.
Yeah.
Secondly, a law is a living thing. And thirdly, again, the legal brains on this forum will guide us. I believe law has to be interpreted in the context in which it actually was framed and in which it is applied.
Actually, you're going well. You're moving well.
I know I'm moving well. Yes, yes. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a very, very big student of law.
Yeah.
And I practice tax law. I always have to remind people
Yeah.
that actually taxation is law. If anything, it's one of those laws that if you get wrong, you have to lose money immediately. Whereas other laws, you can go and argue, and whereas wherefores and all sorts of other interesting connotations you come up with.
Yeah.
So capital is a coward. But most importantly, this judgment is a very interesting one, because on Monday, a headline on Bloomberg, financial markets rattled, financial institutions rattled in East Africa. There were two words: jolted, that was a word used by NASDAQ, rattled by Reuters, and I think shock rolling by Bloomberg. So without necessarily debating the merits of the judgment, it is just to know that we as a country are operating in a financially integrated global world. We are net importers of capital, and anything that appears to scare away capital, not investors, but just capital, because when I talk about the NDP, 38% is going to come from private sector. If we only have 34 trillion shillings in our banking system, and we need 348 trillion to transform our economy, that money is coming from abroad. You do anything that seems to imply that there's no stability, there's no certainty, there's inconsistency in policy, they'll just walk away. Yeah. And that would be bad for us.
Good. Ramadan, hearing from your colleagues, what do you make of this ruling in terms of the economic implication generally on business, implication on business?
Thank you very much.
And start us on how would you want this matter solved, given the legal versus the business controversies?
Thank you very much, Charles, and the legal minds which are on the panel and the senior have spoken. I think for me, I will start from the point of view that every country, let alone Uganda, needs capital to develop. Capital is a fundamental requirement of development. And in Uganda, we have 4 binding constraints to our development agenda. And one of them is capital. We have very limited capital, and even that limited we have is very impatient and very expensive. We know this. Number 2, we also have a problem of transport, very high transport costs and the poor modes of transport. We don't have intermodal transport which could generate development. And then we have 3, the cost of electricity, as we know. And then 4, and to me the most important, is trust. We have very low levels of trust in Uganda. And it contributes to a lot of other transaction costs which we face as a country. Now, this connects me to the question you're asking: what's the implication of this to the economy of Uganda, and where I would want it to go. I'm not a lawyer. I will join a senior Kamlegea. I'm an economist. But I've been listening and consulting widely to the, to the lawyers and those who have worked with the central bank. in very senior positions, and those who have worked with the commercial banks, and some of them still working with. And all of them really, you find that there is no consensus on how this ruling should have been handled, or this case should have been handled, and where perhaps it's taking the sector and the economy. I find very divergent views from different people. But I would want to say and state, not necessarily in line of the law or so on, that I wouldn't want to see anyone using a loophole in a system to take money away from another person, let alone institutions. I would need to ensure that anyone who takes money from someone else for purposes of using it as capital should pay back that money to whoever they took it from, no matter the legal kind of gymnastics. But that said also, I wouldn't want to hear that a bank is taking money from its client, and the client does not have recourse in a way of recovering that money from the bank. And I want to tell you, Charles, that much as we are discussing the issue of harm and DTB, we have had these conversations again and again. I am a columnist. I write in the papers. I've been writing since I left university, a column. Are you listening, Mr. President? And I've been asking Mr. President whether he's listening for the last 15 years or so. I remember 6 years ago, I wrote an article, and I said that Ugandan banks risk scoring own goal. And I was basing that article on the way banks were behaving towards their customers, leave alone the issue of interest rates, which has been the biggest debate in Uganda, because they have not been reducing as Ugandans would expect, but also because of a number of cases that I got privy to, especially that time when there was a debate in Uganda of bailout. I don't know whether you remember bailout debate. Yeah. When we had a crisis in 2016, after the election, and many people were going under, many businesses were going under, and there was an effort to support some of these businesses to remain afloat. And a number of these businesses were hosted by a panel which was constituting Bank of Uganda, the Ministry of Finance, and the other private sector key players. And I got the privilege of sitting in some of these, and I listened to very, very scary stories coming from people who were actually crying that banks were tricking them to lose their property. It actually bordered what we call in economics predatory lending, whereby a bank can easily trick you into failing to pay the loan with the intention of taking your collateral, which is usually higher in value than what the loan they have given the borrower. Some of these voices were really genuine, because some of even the buyers of these property were close associates of banks. And these things, there is a report on that record. So I'm starting from therefore there that we should not use any loophole in the system to steal money from banks, but likewise we shouldn't lose the same loopholes wherever they are happening to steal money from the clients.
Okay. Okay, good. So you are agitating for or appealing for equity in business generally. Is that so?
Yes,
Good.
partially, but also to really rebuild the trust, because
Does it
the
exist?
financial system
Can it exist?
flourishes on trust. But in Uganda, I want to tell you, every day that passes, the way we are doing business and we are behaving is eroding the little trust that used to exist, and the financial system cannot.
Okay, let me bring the let me swing this discussion back to Council Muema. Your colleague on the discussion has referred to issues of trust reducing, predatory lending, but he has touched on what I think we shouldn't hide away from, because many people out there commenting on this ruling in the aftermath of this judgment have said that your client, Ham, is using a loophole in the law, which will definitely be there, lacunas in the law are there always, in order to rob. In fact, let me take it from what the social media have said, that he is a thief, in quotes, stealing from other thieves, meaning that the banks are also thieves, except that your client is now a thief who is sympathized with. Do you think that that is the scenario we have in this economy in Uganda?
Charles,
Yeah.
if Ham Enterprises had stolen money or taken anybody's money, they would have gotten sued. I just explained the bank did not sue Ham.
They did not.
They did not. So I think a thief gets sued. The thief in this case got sued.
The one which was caught. No, but sometimes you catch a thief.
No. But Charles, I've been listening patiently to my colleagues here.
Yeah.
And you know, Charles, we have a problem in this country or in this part of the world.
Speak to it.
Reading is a problem. We don't have a reading culture. So a lot of things which are in front of us, they are there, but we don't see them, and then we say something different. But let me go back to the stealing. Let's see who was stealing in this judgment. Forget even the money Ham is asking for. Let's go to these syndicated loans, okay? What is the law? We have tax experts here. What is the tax law on taxation of non-residents who earn interest, who earn loyalties, who earn income from sources within Uganda? What is the law? Has that law been applied? Okay? Has Section 83 of the Income Tax Act been applied to these foreign loans? If it has not been applied, then somebody is stealing through these foreign loans. The tax experts will tell you that, okay, even me as a lawyer, I know it. There are exemptions. There are those foreign remittances which are exempt from taxation. And it's very, very clear in Section 83(5) of the Act. It says if the loan is obtained from outside and secured by a debenture or mortgage issued outside Uganda, all those are exempt. What I'm telling you is not something that Ham created. It's something which has been in the law for a long time. And the complaint that I see that the banking sector is having is because somebody has touched a piece of cake that they were enjoying without attention from anyone. Somebody is taking it away. And naturally, human beings would like to keep to themselves that which they have in their closet. So for me, I think when we sit here and say that, oh, the ruling is going to affect capital, capital is a coward, true. But capital is controlled worldwide. If you don't control how capital moves, you're going to get problems. They will tell you here, during the oil boom in the 70s, there was a big problem because the American banks, which got a lot of petrodollars, were using these petrodollars for regime change in Latin America and so on. The people like Pablo Escobar were created by petrodollars. If you leave too much money to go into any country, okay, you can destroy the country. That is why we have anti-money laundering regime, which is very strong. They will tell you Uganda is performing so poorly in terms of control of illicit movement of funds. There is an intergovernment agency. I represent the Law Society on the financial intelligence monitoring. You know, they want legal persons to be accountable and so on. We are performing so poorly. Can you imagine we are ranked with countries like Syria, which has been at war for the last 10 years or so. We are ranked same like Zimbabwe. Kenya is even above us. So what I'm trying to say, if we talking about capital here, we need to be careful. Capital is not a loose thing that you just leave to move around. I can assure you,
it must be regulated.
If somebody wants to say that any international bank or anybody is free to pour money here, I guarantee you, the day Bank of America or any of these huge giants pour money here, we can collapse in a minute.
Okay.
Because this sector, and that's why you need to understand, we have a central bank. Can we please read up? What is the first function of the central bank? To control monetary stability. Yeah. Meaning this small cocoon of ours, this country of ours, if you don't have a central bank to be a gatekeeper, to control what comes in and goes in, then you have a problem. Because as a country, we have priorities. We are agro-based, for example. If we want to boost agriculture, we get money towards that direction. So we make sure that capital goes towards that direction. So I would like to take away the myth
maybe,
that
to interject a bit.
Yes, please feel free. But with this permission, so that you don't interrupt.
Can I remove the myth?
So that you don't interrupt the flow of knowledge.
The myth is that this ruling is chasing our capital. I strongly object to that myth. Capital worldwide is controlled, okay? There is no country, and I wish any panelist here to tell me a country where you can just throw money around, a bank takes in money and takes out. It's not there. Why? Because we have an international financial regime. The Financial Institutions Act, which has these provisions that the judge quoted in making the judgment, is a reflection of international law. I don't want you to think that it's the NRM which made the Financial Institutions Act in 2004. No, this is something coming from above. You understand? And that's why you see, like right now, Uganda is lagging behind. We have got to ensure we put systems in place to make sure that we are compliant in controlling inflow. So it's not true that capital just moves. No, it just doesn't move. And if we are saying we have a national development plan, my colleague rightly said, we need 348 trillion, and most of this money comes from borrowing.
Yeah.
I thought that we could say we need to improve our tax collection. Our tax collection in the region is one of the lowest. He will tell you, our tax to GDP ratio is so low. It's lower than the African average. I think we're doing about 15%.
I think 13.
So
about 13.7 thereabout.
Even if you compare that tax that we are collecting, how much of it is corporation tax paid by entities and so on? It is so little. So what this ruling has done.
Great point that you have raised,
yes,
that you have actually touched on. I need some of them to start responding to them so that we don't miss them, because those are all important.
While I'm still on the floor, or?
No, I think you have to.
No, can you hold it there? Because there was Ramadan who was burning with an attempt to respond. Ramadan, respond, and then I bring in Kamulege.
I wanted to, at the point when he was talking about the flow of capital, I wanted to remind the senior counsel that in 1997, Uganda liberalized its capital account, which meant that Uganda chose the route of allowing money to come in and money to get out of the country at will.
Does liberalization mean no regulation? As
this is the challenge I've been writing about. In Uganda, we took it literally. That liberalization is synonymous with deregulation. And also we took it literally to mean that when we were asked to open up for capital and the trade and other, movements of factors of production and wealth, we took it literally to mean that we had to pluck out the door and throw it away. It's like somebody saying, open that door, and for you, Uganda, you
just
pluck
remove
it
the
out
whole
and
piece.
throw it away. That's what we did. So I don't think it would be correct for us to say that the laws in Uganda prohibit the movement of capital, or they regulate the movement of capital. Actually, as the central bank stated in the statement, that's what has been happening. And I'm not a lawyer, but I would want to say that that has been the culture here. Capital comes, and once you allow money to come, you can't stop it from going. The only thing you have to do is to ensure that that money which comes is not hot money. It's not going to create instability in the financial system and in the macroeconomy. And that is the role BOU plays under what they call inflation targeting light, to ensure that they monitor wherever they don't monitor individual transactions, they monitor aggregates. Or that when an aggregate of transactions has been made in Uganda, how is it affecting the flow of resources within the financial system? And with that, if they see, they have models, of course, they have inbuilt models to track that. If they see any risk of, for example, inflation or foreign exchange volatility, then usually they intervene. We can always discuss the merits of this kind of policy framework.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because for you as a political economist, I needed you also to touch on whether the argument by counsel...
I'm not comfortable, Charles, with this arrangement myself.
You're not.
I've been always arguing about it.
Okay.
But it has been what has been
because
happening.
I also don't want... sorry, Ramadan.
What Fred
sorry,
has done for us.
Actually, what Fred has done reminded me yesterday when I was watching this clip of Ham, his client, where he's talking about the economy benefiting mostly foreigners as opposed to the indigenous. And I thought that where Fred is referring to the tax laws and how, foreigners are benefiting from it.
Yeah.
I thought that we need to also touch on that and see whether that argument is on merit.
The argument is on merit. And we have had a lot of, conversations about this issue, really. If you could check the conversations which have been in Uganda. That's why I'm saying that. This landmark ruling...
Francis has removed his mask, so you better wear yours, because he's now entering.
Charles,
yes,
as Francis comes,
yes.
I just want to, to get some parity here.
Yeah.
Because Francis talked about, many projects, Bujagali, no bank can lend. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with this ruling, because we have a legal framework that provides for sovereign borrowing by our country from international lenders and so on. So, for example, the External Loans Act will deal with those big projects and so on. This ruling did not touch that. So, I think it's not very fair when we are talking about a ruling that deals with one customer and stops one bank from coming into the jurisdiction, and then we extrapolate it so much to say Bujagali will be affected. No, every single loan that is led by IFC, that is led by the World Bank, even the World Bank, when it's lending, there's a law, there's a control. So for me, my point, the emphasis I'm making here, this belief that a ruling has stopped free movement, there is nothing called free movement of capital. Capital is controlled, because uncontrolled capital movement causes issues. That's why we have the laundering laws and so on. So I'm in agreement with my colleagues on the side of tax. But all I am saying, can we have a community of interest? Can we converge to one area? Okay. We have a national development plan. We need money. Can we ensure that businesses that are done, income that is derived in Uganda, is taxed so that we develop our country? You understand? Instead of advancing the argument that capital will go away, let's first advance our argument as Ugandans. If there is a transaction
Would that you're pushing for need to start from having a law, say under FIA,
Financial Institutions
maybe let me
Act.
deal with this.
Financial Institutions Act? Should it start from there? Because as I was going to read to remind you, Council Mwema, that in the statement that Bank of Uganda governor released this morning, after following this ruling, there were especially two parts that were telling that we needed to even talk about. The governor says, I think in page 2, he says, Bank of Uganda does not regulate extension of loans, credit, or the financing of commercial transactions that are funded, 1, using funds owned privately by individuals, corporates, private equity funds, local or foreign. And then he says in I think 3, which is more relevant, he says using funds obtained from foreign banks that do not take deposits from the public in Uganda. And then I think the other number 5 is using funds of development institutions, be they multilateral or bilateral, whether such funds are advanced and administered directly by these institutions or through financial institutions in Uganda. There were 5 points that he made.
That is an opinion which is not consistent with the law. The law is here, you understand, for a governor of a central bank to say that private funds, it doesn't touch them. So we're going to allow drug dealers, whoever, to bring millions of dollars here. Really, that's not the law.
Okay.
Simple.
Good.
That's not the law.
Let me take in practice at this point.
Okay, first of all, Charles, you invited quite a number of us here. So let's have a very balanced discussion.
Okay.
Secondly, Council, you talked about the issue of taxation. But before even I talk about taxation, we need to be very careful as Ugandans when we're talking about investment. The biggest source of capital formation in this country is investment. That investment is both by local Ugandans and foreigners. Now, when capital comes into this country, it does not have a nationality. It does not have a passport. When you're going to pay tax in the URA, they don't ask for your passport. They tax you based on the source of income, the business that you're doing, and also the character or head of taxation that you're paying. So whenever people talk about investors and then they add foreign investors, yes, foreign direct investment, FDI, is the biggest source of capital formation in this country. That's a fact.
Yeah.
If you got Uganda Investment Authority, State House, National Development Plan, everywhere, Minister of Finance, the minister in charge of investment is to encourage investment, both local and foreign. Now, let's talk about taxation. Our tax policies in this country are designed to encourage trade, investment, and also, wherever possible, take away barriers, especially when it comes to global financial intermediation. So I'm telling you here, Council, that withholding tax does not apply on interest paid on a loan from a foreign bank. And you've talked about Section 83.5. We don't want to talk about sections on this forum, but I'm happy to have this debate and conversation with you separately. We shouldn't have it on this platform. But for the record, I even issued an opinion to the Uganda Bankers Association. I don't want us to discuss that here now, but if you, just hang on. If you borrow from the bank and you borrow 100 million shillings and you're paying interest of 10%, you are going to pay 10% at the end of the year. You don't withhold tax if you're paying interest to a local bank. Now, if you borrow from a foreign bank and you are required to withhold tax, which in this case, the requirement is not there. Many of the commentators and people commenting on this forget that the obligation to withhold tax is on the borrower. So if there was a requirement, assuming that there was a loan from DTB Kenya to HAM, I don't want to talk about personalities here, but let's use it as an example, because the example we are dealing with. The person who would be required to withhold tax is the borrower. Now, if I'm DTB Kenya and I'm lending you 100 million, and I want interest of 10%. I want 110. If you tell me that the Ugandan law requires you to withhold, I'll simply gross up my interest so that you give me 115. Just hang on, just hang on.
Council, just hold on.
And then if you then tell me that I'm not going to bear the cost, because the withholding tax will be borne by the borrower. And people who bring money in this economy of ours have a choice. So money comes into this country as investment, as equity, whether it's venture capitalists, as debt, if it's lending, or donations as grant. So for the record and for the viewers who are watching this, there is no requirement to withhold tax on that kind of interest as long as you meet certain conditions. And those conditions, we've taken the view and we've looked at the loans that are in this market. This is the law that has been in place since 1997. And it's not a coincidence that that date coincides with the liberalization of the economy, whether it is the constitution, you name it. But if, on the other hand, there are people who are thinking that government is losing tax by not taxing this interest, and for that matter, maybe the law should be amended, investors and lenders have a choice. Certainly, nobody is going to bring money in Uganda and suffer withholding tax at 15% gross interest and then go back home and pay 30%, whether it's in Kenya, UK, or South Africa. So no loss of tax, in my view, is happening because that money would not even have come here in the first place if that tax was there. But Council, before you come in, no, you'll come in, but whether you agree with me or not,
that's the only thing I know.
Okay. Yeah. Whether you agree with me on that one, I'm just saying that we can take this debate offline, and I'll tell you the practice and the interpretation is that there's no withholding tax on that.
I want to tell you the law, because I'm also a tax...
Council Mwema, your colleague on the right was dying to respond.
Can he respond after I have spoken? Because he was answering to me. Let it not cool down. Please. Francis, as a legal practitioner, I handle tax disputes. I do tax litigation. I've handled some of the biggest tax refunds in this country.
Yep.
So I am very conversant with tax law.
I know you are.
And I wish I could see your opinion that you have written that says that payments on interest, tax payments on international loans or foreign loans do not, that there is no tax payable at all. And I am saying here again, I am saying here, because I'm very conversant with this subject, I am saying that the only exception, Section 83, provides for levying of income tax on a non-resident, like a foreign bank, that earns interest or income from sources within Uganda. Sources within Uganda, income which is sources within Uganda is Section 79, okay? I'm sorry, I have to quote sections here, because I know the law, that's the only thing I know. Now, the only exemption...
What does it say, 79?
It describes what income from sources within Uganda is, okay? And I don't need to go into that in detail, but I'll tell you the exemption is subsection 5, and it says that you will not be liable to pay tax if you get a loan from out, if the debenture includes mortgage under the income tax act. If the debenture or mortgage was created outside Uganda. So, for example, in this, that's what it says.
No, so give in the example of this.
In the case of harm,
judgment we had.
Francis, this is what I do for a living. So let me explain. In the case of harm, the mortgage, okay, was created in Uganda.
Yes.
If you read the mortgage, it says under the laws of Uganda. The credit facility was issued in Kenya, witnessed by lawyers here. The whole transaction is domiciled here. So I want, Francis says we should have another discussion. Please call me any day. Give me your opinion in advance. I'll give you mine. I want the public to know that countries which attract much more foreign direct investment, like South Africa, have very stringent controls on inflows. Very stringent. But how come they attract investment? When you have controls, when you have regulation, it doesn't mean you will discourage investment. Kenya here has more stringent controls than us, but it attracts more investment. So I think it's the duty of myself, Francis, and everybody here to guide, assist our government, assist our people to ensure that, moreover, we've passed these laws. These laws were not passed because of harm. These laws were passed 16 years ago.
Correct.
And why were they passed? They were passed to put us in line with the international financial markets. And therefore, for me, when my friend here, Ramadan, says liberalization, which more economy is more liberal than the Europeans, like the US and so on? But do you know that for them, their corporations account for 40% of the taxes they are collecting? For us here, we are getting very, very small amounts. So I am saying, my point, Charles, is we should not use the ruling as a scapegoat for our problems, our problems of poverty, our problems of lack of capital, our problems of lack of investment are not caused by this ruling. This ruling is not inventing anything. This ruling is only restating the law.
Are we using cowardice to receive this ruling and analyze it from a coward point of view?
No, not cowardice. That's blackmail. They are using blackmail to say, please, this piece of paper.
But who are we blackmailing?
That is blackmail.
Who are we blackmailing?
You blackmail my client. You say he stole. The guy is the creditor in this case. The bank is the debtor.
But he's not using any loophole.
No, he's not using a loophole. What my client has done, if my client had not done a ruling, Charles, if my client had not gone to court, would you be sitting here discussing this?
Let's go for a break. Let's go for a break. Council Mwema, let's go for a break right now. The discussion is still going on. When we come back, I will bring the discussion to Council Ellison to answer the question of whether or not the lacuna, or as locally known as loopholes in the law, is being used to unfairly gain advantage. But let's go for a break right now.
Maria, since our parents are too busy with work, can we spend more time together and have fun? You can come to our home.
Akena, we still have to be careful with our lives while we wait to go back to school. Do you remember Jen, our classmate? She was misled and now she's pregnant. And her parents said they won't take her back to school. Are you ready to give up your dream of becoming a doctor and become a dad at your age?
Dear parents, our children are still at home and exposed to risks like teenage pregnancies, drug abuse, and child sacrifice. Let us be alert not to lose an entire generation. Seek help by calling 116.
This message is brought to you by the AfriChild Center Makerere University in partnership with the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development.
When WHO declared COVID-19 as a pandemic, the Ministry of Health reactivated the National Task Force.
So from history, we have been managing the previous pandemics, SARS, Ebola, and our motto was to stay safe in order to treat others.
We are looking at training healthcare workers continuously. We've applied this capacity building to the entire country.
We should continue getting the essential services that we have been getting before, so that we don't die from the other condition when we are trying to prevent COVID-19.
Our mission to ensure the safety of Ugandans is long-standing, and we promise to see it through till COVID-19 is eradicated.
This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Health with support from the Japan International.
You're coming back on air. Welcome back to the show. It's getting hot under the AC here, and what an interesting discussion. We are looking at the implications of the Ham versus Diamond Trust Bank judgment or ruling that came out this week. And in the studio, I have some of the best brains that can discuss this topic. We have Fred Mwema. He is a lawyer for Ham and is the managing partner for Muema and Company Advocates. We have Francis Kamulegea, a non-tax expert. He is the country senior partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers Uganda. We have Ellison Karuhanga. He is a partner at Kampala Associated Advocates, I think probably the biggest law firm, single law firm in the country. And then we have Ramadan Gobi, who is an economist and teaches political economy at Makerere University Business School. We have on Zoom, the network, I'm told, has been corrected. We have the Bank of Uganda Executive Director in charge of supervision, Mr. Twinemanzi Tumubwene. You're most welcome to the show, and it's good you have been following and that you are able to join us. You have probably by now heard how the discussion has been going on, but allow me bring in some very fast comments coming from outside. Chris says, kindly Charles, tell Obed that all capital actually has nationality. And kindly tell him that the purpose of capital is profit. No capital comes to Uganda for charity. A non-Ugandan company comes to Uganda to make profits, which profits are repatriated to the country of stakeholders' origin. The origin of owners of capital is the nationality of that capital. And then I have certain comments that have come that we need to respond to. Morrison Rakakamba says, you borrow some money from a Kenyan chap. Time to pay back, you're like, by the way, you are not a Ugandan, right? How did you cross Busia? You must be in Uganda illegally. I can't pay you back. Paying you back is illegal. That will be responded to by Council Muema. And then someone, this is also going to Muema, to Council Muema. Okello Robert says, what business was this money meant for, and what business does Ham do, if any? That's someone called Robert Okello. And then, Council Muema, you are, I think this is good. When you are in class and all the questions are going to you, you feel good. David Mugisha says, Charles, please ask Muema whether this Kenyan transaction with DTBK was a syndicated loan. From what Bank of Uganda explained in its statement, it wasn't. And then to Ellison or to Kamulegea, David says, what is the meaning of financial institution in Uganda? And ask whether a bank in the rest of the world can be a financial institution in Uganda. But for now, let me bring in Council Ellison, and then I will bring in Twinemanzi, the Executive Director, following you. There were a number of issues that were raised by your colleague to the left, and but starting with, is the loophole in the law a gray area that is being used to do a lot of these things, whether it is unjust enrichment or all this kind of thing? What do you think? And you can use the opportunity to also respond to some of the issues he raised.
Thank you once again, Charles. And I think we have to look at this, the context of this case. The complexity in this case, and I think Fred has been pointing it out, is twofold. You have two documents, two primary documents that govern this transaction. One document is a credit facility agreement, where a bank has agreed to lend someone money. Sorry. The other one is a mortgage document, where a bank, where the person who has been lent money is securing his property. The credit agreement does not create a security interest in the property. It's important. I hope I've not complicated it.
You're complicating it.
When you go to a bank and you sign an agreement to borrow money,
yes,
and you write in that agreement that I'll give you my house.
Yeah.
If the bank does not have a mortgage, which it registers with the Ministry of Lands in Uganda, it cannot sell your house.
Yes.
The mortgage interest is what we call a security interest. And it's governed and regulated by a mortgage act. So there is a law that governs mortgages. Even how they are signed, how they are registered, where they are taken. So there are two different types of regulations that will govern your facilities. On the one hand, there's a credit relationship, debtor, creditor. On the other hand, there's a security interest. The bank, if a Ugandan, so this is one of the big interesting puzzles in this case. If I have property in Uganda, can that property in Uganda secure for me a loan from Kenya? If I take, for example, Ramadan's view and say that in Uganda there is predatory lending. However, in...
Not my view.
Okay.
Is it a fact?
Well.
He put it as a fact.
It's an observation.
It's his observation. It's his observation. But if you say, I don't want to borrow from these Ugandan banks, let me go to
Kenya.
And I take a loan from a Kenyan bank. And the Kenyan bank tells me, what property do you have in the event that you don't pay? And you must understand this. The purpose of security and of a separate loan security is to enable the flow of credit. If I borrow money and I do not pay it back, how do I expect the bank to pay back its depositors? Because the bank is actually borrowing from the public by making us deposit. Every time you deposit in a bank, you're lending it money. How will it pay you back if the people it's lending that money are not paying it? So if the bank tells you that, now I like you, you sound very nice, you look like an honest chap. But what happens, honest chap, if you don't pay me back? You say you have this property. In case I don't pay you back, my property is valued at X, it can pay you. So can Ugandan property secure a Kenyan facility? Yeah? This is different from a case where somebody is... So the question is not so much the right of the lender, because we are mixing two things. There is the right of the lender, the duties of the lender, the predatory nature of lenders. But what about borrowers? What about the right of a businessman to raise cheap capital from anywhere in the world? Are we trying to unnecessarily limit Ugandan businesses from borrowing money abroad? Or are we saying that Ugandan property should not secure foreign facilities? Because I can tell you that if you go to Kenya and you sign a mortgage deed under the laws of Kenya, you cannot recover that mortgage here. So either you're writing our property market out of international trade, or you're threatening borrowers, the ability of borrowers to raise money. Now that's not to... Now that's one aspect which I think needs to be clear. That when you talk about two distinct laws, the law of Kenya and the law of Uganda, you're talking about a borrower-lender relationship, and you're also talking about a security interest. In this case, this Fred said correctly that Ham wasn't sued. But you see, a bank doesn't have to sue you when you take your property to it. The law allows it, under the mortgage laws, to sell your property without recourse to court.
To recover.
Yes, it says that you have put property in the bank, you can lose it. And in fact, I believe, and I can be corrected, this suit actually arose from an attempted recovery by the banks of their money.
True.
So I think to say that he wasn't sued is to...
They had taken an action.
They had taken an action.
Then they were sued because of that action.
Because of that action
Council
that they had
Fed
taken.
can correct us.
Yes.
Now or later.
Whenever. But so that's the second point. But the overall point is this. I agree that there is no such thing as unregulated capital. However, we must understand that the regulation, what you're looking for is clarity. What is interesting about this ruling, I'll repeat, is that it's a definitional, foundational ruling. It is a ruling on the foundations. Business has been conducted in a certain way. And I've told you one of the challenges as to why the business is conducted in that way is because of the limited nature of capital available to banks. We gave examples of America, of Europe, but you must remember that those are net exporters of capital. They have enough capital for themselves and for the rest of us. We are in the position of being net importers of capital. So when you look at the regulation of capital, nobody is saying that capital shouldn't be regulated. For example, if a Kenyan bank lends me money and secures my house, that security is regulated by the Mortgage Act, just by way of example. If it's earning income from Uganda, whether there are exemptions or no exemptions, it is still regulated by our Income Tax Act. We must understand that borrowing should not be, lending shouldn't be predatory. I will agree with that. But similarly, money borrowed must be repaid. Because the money which is borrowed is usually somebody else's money. And secondly, if you borrow money and you do not pay it, you limit the chance of your other brother to borrow money. You increase the risk standards. You increase the sort of securities that they will take. If I cannot keep recovering on mortgages, if this year there are 10 mortgages taken out and 5 of them can't be recovered, banks will start losing interest in land.
Okay.
Once banks start losing interest in land, you need to understand that the number of things that you can be built, the number of things that can be built by this credit shouldn't really be underestimated within our local economy.
Yeah.
Then the fact that the banks have to syndicate. Syndication is not predatory. It's not even evil. It's not even wrong that people are coming together to lend viable projects. If I am out there sitting and I have a project that I think can sell, I want to do something with green energy, I want to do something with construction, I want to do something that's going to create jobs, and I go out there to look for capital. If my idea can sell, very many businesses, very many successful businesses, a large number of them are built off the back of credit.
Yeah.
A large number of them. And we shouldn't make it difficult for these businesses to get credit by making credit a very difficult thing to access or making repayment wrong. So the basic principles are: one, money borrowed must be repaid. Whatever happens. I mean, let us say, for example, that there was an illegality. Morrison Rakakamba's question is like what we call in law the principle of approbation and reprobation. You cannot come to me to borrow. When you're borrowing, it is lawful. But when you're paying back, the transaction becomes unlawful. Yeah? You who took part in an unlawful transaction, yeah? Both of us have committed a sin.
So how do we sort that sin?
And both of us should be punished for the sin that we have committed. But I can
how do you met out that punishment now in this case?
We cannot sin together and I am punished alone. So,
which brings me to a question. At that right point. Tinka asks to Muema, 1, did Ham access a loan from DTB Kenya? 2, has he repaid the loan? The legal loophole notwithstanding. 3, if he has not, does he have intentions to repay? 4, does the legal loophole exonerate Ham from repaying the loan? Address this to Fred Muema. And then there is Ismail Ladu, says, all the panelists, I think Ismail Ladu is just interesting. He says, all the panelists are raising solid arguments, and I'm now left wondering who is right and who is wrong. I am enjoying the show though, and what a deserved break from the usual predictable political menu we always get served. I don't know who wants to go first.
Charles.
Yes, I know that we have Manzi on.
They're asking me so many
questions.
Yes,
that is why I wanted you to respond.
They want me to
just
answer.
Let me give you 2 minutes so that we do justice to the executive director waiting on.
Okay,
on
I'm waiting to hear from him.
Yeah.
Did Ham borrow money?
Yeah.
Yes, there was a credit transaction. Not one, so many.
Yeah.
If you check his account over a period of 10 years, more than $50–60 million. So you can see he's been having a good record. Did he pay back? Yes, according to the judgment, because 23 million, 34 billion was taken from him. It constituted a payment at law, so it was an offset.
Yeah.
And I want to say, my colleague here said, when you borrow, you must pay back. That is true, but if you borrow and you have a judgment against a bank which stole your money, you can't pay back. It's as simple as that. Okay? So the other thing is, yeah, you see, the bank's money is important just as your money. So if anybody loses money to a bank, you can't pay it. So banks should be on notice that if you steal the client's money, they will not pay you back. Simple. Now, the issue of, you know, if a Kenyan bank lends and so on, gentlemen, lending by banks in Kenya is highly regulated. Okay? And in this case, I wrote to the Central Bank of Kenya and said, can you show me, this is your law, can you show me the approval? They went mute because this is a problem for them. Ellison, you say, you know, you cannot appropriate and reprobate, you know, you cannot give and then not take. What he's talking about is an equitable principle, which is part of estoppel. But you cannot use appropriate and reprobate against the law. Estoppel cannot be used against the law. You know, once a law is there, you cannot say, I sat with you the other day and this is what you said. You can't change. With the law, you can't. There are decisions to that effect. The other thing I was asked, paying back is illegal. Morrison, you see, Morrison, the law, okay, I can't say it on set. The law is the law. Okay? If the law, Morrison, the law says that it is A, it has got to be A. Whatever the justification, whatever the reason, however nice you are, if the law says what you've done is wrong, it is wrong. Whatever the circumstance.
But Council, isn't that the positivist you know, theory only? Isn't it true that also the law, like Kamulege has said, that the law is supposed to be breathed life into, that it's supposed to be contextual? What is the context that we are working within?
Yeah, Charles, you're talking about the theory. I'm talking about the real laws which are finally made and are living. You understand? Parliament makes laws and they are alive.
Yes.
We have a Contracts Act which was made several years ago. It says you cannot sue upon an illegal contract, whether you are a priest or a bishop. If you did something illegal, you can't sue.
Doesn't that same contract act says where the contract is voidable, that then...
Yeah, that is section 54. But section 19 gives some exceptions. It says that there can be an exception if there was an illegality and you didn't participate in it, then you could recover. So if, for example, in this case, the bank had raised a counterclaim against Ham, saying, you claim we did illegal credit facilities, but you are actually the architect. You are the one who drafted the first page and me, I did the second. You participated. So nothing like that was done. So Morrison, you must understand that if you're going to do something illegal, and if you go and give, Morrison, if you go and give somebody money to give you something, a banned substance, you're going to lose your money. You'll not be paid because it's illegal. What business does Ham do? You must know that for somebody to be able to borrow $10 million, I don't know how many of us here can go to a bank and get $10 million, but by the time you get $10 billion, you are probably worth $100 million. If you want to know what he does, it's confidential information between him and his bank, but definitely he was assessed and he qualifies to get those kind of loans and be able to pay.
He sues banks.
Then the other thing is, yeah, of course, suing. Fortunately, the courts were put, and we lawyers are in business, because if Francis wants to sue, he comes, and I sue. So it's not wrong for somebody to sue. Actually, instead of using mob justice and an eye for an eye, you are encouraged to come to me or to Ellison, and we go to a court to decide. Suing is a civilized way of doing things.
And we fight civilized.
Yes, so Ham is very civilized to go to a court.
Okay.
Some people use witchcraft.
Let me ask a follow-up question. Council Mwema, just a short follow-up question. Yeah. Don't you think this action of Ham not paying and using the law not to pay to get the reprieve is going to make him lose trust. And as we talked here, business deals with trust, and him being an entrepreneur, he wants to grow bigger. Will any other bank or any lending institution or business partner really trust him from now on?
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
By the bank stealing money from a customer, they are decampaigning the banks. We are one of the most unbanked populations in the world.
True,
we have
true.
very few people with bank accounts. So if people
I don't think
hear
we
on
even
radio,
reached 20 yet.
yes, so if people hear on radio that you go to a bank and your money gets stolen, people will be discouraged. So please don't concentrate on harm. Tell the banks to behave, and I wish UBA comes here and condemns the errant banks, the errant bank staff who are stealing bank property, I mean customers' properties.
money.
Yes, so I think the trust is both ways.
Yeah, true, true.
I think the message that Ham is sending to Ugandans is, please be on the lookout, check your statement, check where that 1 shilling went, that $1, which is good, okay? Awareness.
Okay.
So Ham should be applauded. Instead of, if Ham was not
for
a
opening our
Ugandan,
eyes.
I don't think you'd have an issue. But because Ham is a Ugandan, you look at 23 million, we are not used to Ugandans having this money. With foreigners, we would allow them to take this kind of money. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, when Ellison says that you see a bank has a mortgage and therefore it doesn't have to sue, Charles, you see, there are many banks which have mortgages that sue in court, get a judgment, and execute.
True.
A mortgage is like a contract. If I lend you money and I have a contract, it's some kind of security. But the moment we go to court, then I must present all my grievances to court. The bank which has a mortgage should also be able to present its case. If it feels that money was stolen from it, it should present it before the judge.
Okay, gentlemen, let me bring in Twine Manzi Tumubwene, Bank of Uganda Executive Director, on the line.
Can I just make one sentence? Sorry,
let me. Sorry, no, Colonel Ellison, just 1 minute. Hold it. I will make sure I give you the opportunity. He has really waited on the wings. Manzi, Manzi, are you online?
Waiting long.
Have we lost him? Have we lost him?
Hello?
Manzi?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I can see you. Manzi, are you online? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Charles, I can hear you.
Good. You have.
Charles, I can hear you.
Good. I can hear you as well as see you too. Thanks for joining the discussion. This is Behind the Headlines on UBC, and we are discussing the implications of Ham versus DTB judgment this week. I wanted to, coming from Bank of Uganda, the regulator, you were indicted for failing to adhere to regulate the market. In the orders, one of the orders by Justice Odongtho is that you must ensure that you make the laws work, and that Bank of Uganda is not doing its bit to the to the letter. What did you think about that judgment in as far as the implications are concerned?
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Charles. At the risk of, I'm going to be very careful with my words, not being in contempt of court. The judge issued orders. Fortunately, the orders have been stayed, but the judge issued orders. If you look at the statement that we issued this morning or today, what we did was we focused on what we think, or from our understanding, both of the and of the public sentiment, on some of the key matters in terms of this ruling.
But Council Mwema has said you are just expressing an opinion, not law.
Execution business. I beg your pardon?
Council Mwema has said you are just expressing an opinion,
yes,
an ordinary opinion, not law.
Business? I'll allow him to state what he thinks he wants to say. That is okay. That's entirely his business. He will have his chance to say what he wants to say. I'm allowed to. You've given me the opportunity to say something, and I will do so.
Okay.
And so we extract what our understanding and our application of a financial institution is, what a financial institution business is, and what agency banking is, because these were matters that were raised in the ruling. To say that Bank of Uganda is not implementing the law as it is, I think is stretching the truth a bit too far. Yes, perhaps there might be some issues and some aspects of the financial sector for which we can definitely improve, and yes, that I agree. But you cannot to say that we are not doing so, or we should implement the law as it is. I think we are basically doing that which we are mandated to do, both under the Bank of Uganda Act, the Financial Institutions Act, and the other acts that we use and regulations that we use in the regulation of the banking sector. So for the time being, that is all I am going to say. If the appellant court decides to uphold those orders, then we shall go back and see where it is that and I've had some of the panelists say that maybe exploiting a loop, if there are loopholes, then we shall go ahead and plug them. But like Ellison said, this is more or less like a landmark ruling, which potentially will have to change if it's maintained. Will change how banking is done, and of course, invariably how it's regulated.
But coming back to one of the issues, as a regulator of the monetary market here, and ensuring that there is monetary stability, don't you think about some of those issues that the judge raised, and don't you think that there are some which you need to start thinking about even without appealing?
There might be. I mean, we've had internal discussions within Bank of Uganda after the judgment was shared, and we will look at those that merit a review, and we'll do so. Just for the information of the panelists and the viewers, we are actually in advanced stages of bringing in amendments to the FIA and the Bank of Uganda Act, which amendments were separate from this ruling. If on further assessment, the outcome of this ruling or the implications of this ruling merit further amendments, we shall do so. In other words, Bank of Uganda, we are not inflexible. We are open to where there are flaws or gaps. We are open to debating them reasonably and putting in the appropriate amendments to ensure that our Financial Institutions Act is not a hindrance, but rather an enabler for the free flow of funds between Uganda and other countries and within Uganda. And of course, like someone indicated, to ensure that it's done in a regulated manner with minimum impact on financial stability within the economy.
Two things that I wanted you to answer. One is on the capacity of Ugandans to bank. What are you doing as Bank of Uganda to promote the capacity of Ugandans to be more bankable? But also, number two, harm can be called anything, as we have seen on social media comments. But he raises some pertinent issues, one of them being that the banking industry is overflowed by only foreign banks, and that they are, some people accuse, now label them as a cartel, that they only are in a syndicate to ensure that, foreign capital benefits the owners from foreign land and not Ugandans. And you are Bank of Uganda, you are supposed to ensure that the money market in Uganda grows, as well as business in Ugandans, and with it probably Ugandans should be growing as well, and the economy growing with Ugandans growing as well. What do you think about that?
First and foremost, if you were to look at the size of the banking sector 20 years ago and where it is today, it has grown largely because of deposits. Even during our own COVID period here, in the initial period of the lockdown, we saw a significant rise in deposits. So I am not too sure about saying that that while the banks are growing, Ugandans are not growing, or there's no visible increase in economic activity. That's not entirely true. However, with regards to the issue of the banks serving foreigners or serving their shareholders, we have to remember one thing, that a bank is first and foremost a company, and the company in its operations has got obligations to its shareholder. That's one. Two, banking sector, the banking sector itself, for companies operating in the banking sector, once they have been licensed as such, become financial institutions and therefore are subject to regulation. And the reason why they are regulated is that they have got a very high leverage ratio. That was when you compare the amount of capital that the owner of a bank has to put up vis-a-vis the amount of deposits or other people's money he or she can hold, it's a very large number. So that's what sometimes in regulatory language we call the inverted structure of capital of banks. And that's one of the reasons why they get regulated. So when you look at the so-called foreign banks, I know that allegation has been made in various fora, but let's try and look at the fact. One of the biggest issues for borrowers in particular, and for the deposit part is not so much, but for the borrowers is information asymmetry. That when someone sits in front of a loan officer, the loan officer is very limited in being able to determine objectively and a priori, before he issues the loan, the willingness of that borrower to repay the money. I know Ellison spoke about having to secure the loan and so on. But sometimes, most times, it's not about just the security, it's about the ability to repay. Now, where we have significant information asymmetry, we don't have a very clear addressing system, we still, our national identification system still has a way to go, even though we made significant progress. The banks do not have ways of uniquely or independently identifying the identity of the persons borrowing from them. All these things tend to get priced within the funds that they're going to lend. So we cannot say that they are favoring foreigners. No. Is it that foreigners have got less information asymmetry about them? That is what it appears to be. Now, in a number of cases, you even have situations where corporate entities, Ugandan corporate entities, in wanting to borrow, have issues in terms of their governance structures or systems or internal mechanism or control mechanisms that qualify them to get either good rate or to even get the money that they seek. Yes, these are gaps that Bank of Uganda has identified. There is an ongoing initiative with the National Identification and Registration Authority to enable banks independently and almost real-time confirm the identity of the persons they're transacting with, whether it's their own customers, whether it's potential borrowers or otherwise. So yes, there is some work, what remains to be done, but then again, it also requires amending some of the existing laws. We all know and are aware of the process of amending laws in this country. So sometimes, even where there's an obvious shortfall or shortcoming within the existing systems, we find ourselves hostage to the processes that we have to go through, and I guess as we'll explain this, we have to go through to amend the laws, because laws are not just amended anyhow.
Okay.
So I beg to differ with those that think that the banks here favor foreigners. Now,
okay. Yeah.
Is it possible that the foreigners present better, have got better credibility? Yeah. Your guess is as good. Figure out that if it's about credibility of borrowers as Ugandans, maybe there's something we need to do about it. The question is what exactly?
Good. Maybe finally, let me ask you a direct question. Two things have happened. Last year, one arm of government, the legislature, indicted you as Bank of Uganda for the lackluster manner with which you carry out maybe supervision or ensure that you conduct your regulatory monetary role. And this week, another arm of government, an important one, the adjudicator, I can say the judiciary, through its ruling by the High Court, is also indicting you and finding you wanting. That's not, I mean, the appeal notwithstanding. How do you feel about that when you are in charge of supervision, Manzi?
Thank you, Charles. Just to correct you, the indictment by the legislature was not on how we conduct supervision, but rather on how we handle the closure of financial institutions. And yes, there were significant gaps. Those have been raised to us, and that is why we have commenced the process of bringing amendments to the FIA to bring more clarity to the resolution process of problem or failed banks. Now, the judiciary has made a decision that appears to indict Bank of Uganda and the manner in which we supervise these transactions. I think the press release which was signed by the governor was quite clear in terms of where our existing mandate starts and stops. However, if, like I said, if it is then demonstrated that the current act of banking business needs to be completely revamped, then we have no option, but we must, and the Constitution requires us to do so, we must amend the way banking business is done, and of course invariably amend the way we regulate banking business.
Thank you so much, Manzi. Let me bring back the discussion to the studio, but I really appreciate your time, and keep with us, keep online until the end. We are about to end, but your colleagues here in the studio want to weigh in on the responses as they are going. Yes, Francis.
Yes, Charles. Thank you very much, Manzi. That was actually very clear, and it has cleared the air on quite a few things. I want to talk about the whole issue about foreign banks and profit repatriation and all that. We need to understand that we operate in a global village. When we talk about our economy, our major source of foreign exchange is tourists. That is foreigners coming in our country and spending money and seeing our very rich wildlife and creating jobs and keeping people in hotels, in the tourist sector, aviation, you name it, in employment. Those are foreigners. When we talk about sources of foreign exchange, it is money from our colleagues in diaspora. Our relatives are out there in diaspora. They are working for foreigners in foreign countries. They bring money into this economy. We like it and we use it, and that's a major source of foreign exchange in this country. When we are talking about growing our economy, we want foreign direct investment. And that is the reason why it's not a coincidence that the biggest taxpayers in this country are foreign direct investors. The moment they come into this country, they set up local enterprises, which are Ugandan companies. So foreign bank, what is it? They are foreign shareholders who own local banks in Uganda. We who are seated here are more informed than the average person out of the street. So please do not call Stanbic Bank a foreign bank. Specify that it has foreign shareholders, and so does some of the alcoholic beverages companies, and so does some of the telecom companies. The moment you start labeling them by way of their passports, and they don't even hold passports, all they have is a certificate of incorporation, then you are creating trouble. Secondly, repatriation of profits. I would like to think that those of us seated here have property, rental property. You've gone to invest, you build a house, somebody lives in it, they pay you rent. You are collecting rent as a result of that investment. So when somebody brings money in this economy, and you are opening the door and telling him, come in, we'll give you a tax holiday, we'll give you incentives, go to Namave, do this, do that, and then suddenly they are productive and they are prosperous and they take money out, and then you have an issue with that. as Ugandans or as a government, then there's a problem. So people who take money out of this country as profit repatriation take it lawfully. Every $100 that they take out of this country, government keeps 55. 30% corporation tax, 15% withholding tax, depending on whether it's a royalty or a dividend. But most importantly, it is a deliberate policy of government, not in Uganda alone, everywhere, to attract capital, come in, go into this sector, be productive, create employment, have capital formation, have a knowledge transfer, employ our people, and if you're lucky and make a profit, we'll take 30% of it. And if you insist on taking it out, we'll take another 15% of it. And then after that, do whatever it is that you want with it. The final one is on banks. There's been so much misinformation and so much bank bashing, and when we were seated here, we are a bit more enlightened, we're a bit more informed, and we understand banking, we understand how the economy works. Banks are not interested in your property. The reason why banks take a security on your property is in the unlikely event you fail to pay, we have this security, and hopefully we'll be able to dispose of it and get our money back. But the first thing they want is give us our money back. So anybody who says that banks come with the intention of taking your property, I don't know whether there are any banks out there who are in the business of buying and selling property. If they are, they will not do it backhand and come and take it from you and then mortgage it and then have to sell it, perfect title, go to court. It's very, very expensive maintaining property if you're in the financial services business. So I just want our viewers and people who really are interested in and they want to know exactly what is happening, to know that by the time a financial institution decide to take your property, it's the last resort. And in fact, even the law right now is structured in such a way that that should not happen. If so many things have to be done for you to get to that last resort. My final one is on taxation. Council Mwema, I'm happy to have this debate with you offline. Taxation is territorial. Taxation in Uganda, you talked about Section 79, specifically, and Ellison actually made the comment as well. The way the tax law is structured, it allows a local Ugandan borrower to go and borrow outside Uganda. It allows the foreign financial institution to take a charge on property located in Uganda. And for that reason, when it comes to the sourcing rules, they say if you have borrowed money from outside Uganda and you have secured it on property in Uganda, or you have secured it on, that is immovable, or you have secured it on movable assets, as in chattels, used in Uganda, then the interest you're earning is sourced in Uganda. So all of us Ugandans seated here, we are taxed on a geographical worldwide basis. It doesn't matter where your income comes from. For as long as you're Ugandan, you're supposed to be taxed on it. Yep. If you're a foreign bank, you're only subject to tax if you source income from Uganda by way of interest. But under 85.3 we discussed, I'm very confident, and I know for certain, and I can say this again, there's no withholding tax obligation. And don't respond to that, we'll take it offline. Please.
Okay, Ramadan.
Thank you, Charles. I'll say two things. Number one, listening to Dr. Manzi, you know, Bank of Uganda has, over the years, been running away from the reality that the world is changing, and they need to up the game on its role to monitor and regulate the financial system in Uganda. I remember some few years ago, not many, I mean not so few, we were having a conversation in the main building of Makerere, and the late Taibwa raised a point to the governor of the Bank of Uganda, and he said, you have allowed banks to be the only entities that make money in Uganda, and not Ugandans. And Mutebile said, what's wrong with banks making money? And I remember interjecting and asking the Honorable Governor, that Governor, what is wrong with the banks making money reasonably? And I think it's really something which requires also the intervention of the central bank to ensure that we are all playing in this space of the financial intermediation at a point where the Ugandans who are borrowing money from banks can use this money to really create value and wealth, pay back the money, and banks also are able to pay their depositors, and we create growth in the sector. Over the years, we have seen that there have been ups and downs in the banking sector. Why? Because, to me, these Ugandan banks, I'm not saying Ugandan banks to mean owned by Ugandans. They are banks which are...
The ones which reside here.
Which are registered and doing business here, and actually they are serving us. They are they have created a situation for themselves where in economics we said that there are two things which can happen to a financial system. And I'll explain them in simple terms. Number one is called adverse selection. Adverse selection happens when banks, because of the way they structure their facilities and the way they are doing business and the prices they charge, they end up attracting more risky borrowers to go for their loans and scare away the less risky ones. Guys who can say, let me go and borrow, and I'm not going to pay back. I will find a way of ensuring that I don't pay back. It has ever happened, you know, the guy who invented this terminology in the financial fraternity, especially in insurance, he found that there were entities, there were people, agents in the economy, who could go to a financial institution with the intention of taking money from that financial institution, well knowing they're not going to pay, but they know that this bit will go to my lawyer, this one will go to the judge, this one will go
Ellison and
for myself. And they don't. That's what we call adverse selection. The second one is called the moral hazard.
The moral
hazard is where, when a banker has structured its, facilities, and the pricing it has made, it is so high that those who borrow, even when they are good borrowers, good in quotes, they come with good intentions to borrow and go and do business and pay back, they find it difficult to invest in safe ventures. So they end up investing in risky businesses, because usually risky businesses are more profitable, to be able to pay these expensive loans priced at very high interest rates. So there is a self-inflicting kind of thing which Ugandan banks need to learn, that when they keep interest rates so high and they structure their loans in such a way that the day you sign on the paper is the day you start to pay, they don't give people grace period. They don't allow you to find mechanisms of using the money, in a manner which will bring good profits to both of you, the investor and the bank. They end up scaring away the good borrowers. They go into adverse selection, and also they end up even affecting those who are good to start investing in a very risky businesses. Finally, banks know that, and this is to Manzi, the banks in Uganda know very well that it is very difficult to effectively monitor them. Everywhere in the world, banks do this. I've been a follower of how banks do business for some time. I don't know how many times I've read that international big banks, JP Morgan, and so on and so forth, are paying fines and fines for flouting certain rules. Banks are difficult to monitor. And the central bank has to invest, therefore, a lot of resources and technical know-how and legal frameworks in ensuring that they monitor these financial institutions such that they play the role which Fred is saying. They can not take advantage of us as Uganda, but also they contribute to the development of the country beyond just the surface that they have lent us money, and also they have been able to pay some tax, but they are doing all of that without under declarations, without hiding certain, transactions, because in this economy you can't tell me that those vices we are mentioning are just observations. No, they are reality. They have been happening here. I've been on panels that have done some audits, and to me, they take me as an economist to audit the economic policy aspects. There's a lot of under-declaration in this country. There are a lot of loopholes which businesses are using not to pay their tax that's supposed to be paid, and that's why our tax GDP ratio is still very low, because of the weaknesses we have.
Councillor Ellison.
Thank you again. I'll just address a few issues, around 3 or 4, very briefly. Firstly, the issue of the foreigners and foreign banks. The financial services sector is a heavily regulated sector. The reason why it's heavily regulated is because it depends on my deposits and your deposits. When we take our money to the bank, we expect on demand to get it back without question. There are many other people who you lend your money and they tell you haven't been paid. Not so a bank. We are supposed to get our money back on demand and immediately. In order to protect us, therefore, there are very stringent regulations on the financial services sector. The more regulated an industry is, the easier it is for bigger capital, and the harder it is for smaller capital. In Uganda, to open a bank, you require a core capital of about 25 billion shillings.
Yes.
That's the minimum. The largest bank in Uganda has a core capital of 700 billion shillings. That ability to have 700 billion shillings means that bank can lend a lot more money to a lot more people than the guy whose bank has been opened with 25 billion shillings. The value, therefore, of foreigners investing in the financial services sector should not be underestimated. They have been able to give us a wide growth in the capital, a wide growth of capital injection, which growth in capital injection allows for onward lending to me and to other people out there who borrow, to the borrowing public. It also ensures the protection of depositors' funds. The issues at stake here should not be issues about identity, color, or nationalism only.
Isn't that a desperate measure now?
No, the issues at stake here are issues
when
of
Ugandans
values.
realize that now we are losing this and the other, then they resort to desperate measures, as they say, desperate situations.
Desperate means
call for desperate measures.
And you're right, there are very many challenges in that regard. But what we must understand is that...
Because, sorry to interrupt you, Ellison, I'm sorry about this.
No
I imagine, ordinarily, if I am working with, let's say, in a normal, popular nomenclature, if I'm working with the Muzungu, and I am able to feed my family, I'm able to meet my liabilities, I'm able to pay my school fees for my children, and also do some good, living, welfare-wise. The Muzungu is also taking away something. I don't think ordinarily I would complain. It's only if I realize that we are working together. But the Muzungu goes on first-class trips to Hawaii, to Mombasa, to Malaysia, and for me, even paying the basics are hard to come by. Then I start invoking those otherwise sentiments, legal things and identities. That's what I think, ordinarily.
No, that may well be the case for that example. But for this one, the point is actually quite different. The point I'm making is not so much the Muzungu, the Ugandan. The point I'm making is that we shouldn't condemn people whose crime we are making it investing in Uganda. Diamond Trust Bank, for example, Uganda. I believe it to be a subsidiary of Diamond Trust Bank Kenya. Diamond Trust Bank in Kenya did not just invest in Ham. They invested in Uganda.
True.
They established a bank here. They met core capital requirements. They lend. They are an important part of our economy. And it's important that they are protected because they have my money and they have other people's money who are out there. And that regulation, they shouldn't do wrong things, no question about that. And nobody is supporting doing wrong things.
Yeah.
And nobody is supporting the Muzungu mistreating you just because he gives you something to eat. But what we are saying is let's not condemn people simply on account
wholesomely
of the fact that they are foreigners who have made a decision to bet on our economy and invest in our country. That is the first point. But also the value of that investment needs to be understood. Very few of us can get 25 billion shillings to start a bank.
And take to another country, for example.
Yes, but someone is investing here upwards of 700 billion. The sort of investment Diamond Trust Bank, for example, is making in this economy shouldn't be underestimated, underlooked, or nor should the bank be insulted. Let's say that the bank was wrong in this transaction. Let's say that the bank shouldn't have lent Ham money. Let's say that the bank, having lent Ham money, committed an illegal act. Let's say that the bank acted wrongly. Let's say some of its staff acted wrongly. I think it is one thing to look at that transaction and paint a color on a particular financial institution. I think it's important that we understand that. The second point which I think it's important to understand is that the economy moves on trust, on credit, on reliability, and on predictability. And I cannot keep emphasizing the fact that capital is a coward. It goes where it grows. You can talk about regulating it as much as you want, but if a capitalist sitting where he is looks at your economy and realizes he will not make money from your economy, he will not come there. The reason why people invest is so they can recoup. And that we should not scandalize I was going to use another word, we should not scandalize making money. Making legitimate money is okay. The third point is I agree that predatory lending is wrong. And I also re-emphasize the fact that money borrowed should be repaid. Because if you don't, if you hold the money back, you are stopping chances of other people accessing this money, who may use this money to better themselves and their community. Finally, I want to make a point about the case itself. And really to say that going to court is a good thing to do. Setting a precedent is also a good thing to do. And so congratulating my learned friend and the learned friends who are on the other side as well, and the judge for sitting down, hearing a dispute, and writing a judgment. This judgment certainly is a judgment that has sent shockwaves throughout. But it's important for us in our jurisprudence in this country to define and look at the foundations. I'm sure that this is a sort of case which it is imperative that an appellate court also has a look at to see the sort of definitions that we require. But no one should take away anything from a learned friend, from my colleague here, for having gone into court and asked to check these principles. And also from the other side, from the bank side, from having come in, because we are at a definition stage in so many of these things.
Yeah.
The FIA, the definition of financial institution, was amended just in 2016.
Yeah, true.
So you're looking at a 4-year existence of those provisions. So it's important that they are reviewed. And so me, I don't have a problem.
They should be tested.
With the testing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we must properly protect things like economic growth, jobs, and also not talk down people who are investing.
Yeah.
Finally, the principles of banking. Banking has moved in Uganda a very long way. We now have consumer protection guidelines in the banking sector. We've not had that in a long time. We have consumer protection guidelines. We have the Bank of Uganda, of course, conducts a very robust supervision function, and the EDS is here, the Executive Director of Supervision is with us. So banking has moved. Banking previously the bank regulation in this country was focused on ensuring that depositors' money is not lost in reckless lending. And along the way, a lot was left in terms of consumer protection. Yeah? Now the regulations have moved. We're also seeing consumer protection coming in. So in summary, there is progress being made on the financial services front, and the financial services sector is growing.
Yeah.
And the final point I want to make is the financial services sector is growing because of both depositors and borrowers.
True.
The vast majority of Ugandan borrowers pay back.
Yeah.
Let this point be clear, that if Ugandans want paying back, banks will not be profitable. Banks are profitable because the vast majority of people out there pay back. So also,
it is only Council Mwema's client who is spoiling the record a bit, right?
Well, no.
No, I'm just joking. I'm just
but so the vast majority of our borrowers pay back.
Yes.
So the final point is that while we shouldn't paint the foreign banks badly, let's also not paint Ugandan borrowers badly.
Okay.
With those few words, I thank you very much. With those few words.
With those few words. Thanks. Finally, Council Mwema.
Charles, the record for my client speaks very well.
Itself.
I don't know how many Ugandans have paid back loans of $50 million and above. Ham has done it. So really, you should not be looking to him for people who don't pay back. Right now, you look at him as somebody who is aggrieved, who wants his money.
Okay.
But I hope the executive director is still there.
He's online listening.
Yes. Mr. Mazi, of course, we've seen your statement. We don't agree with certain things, but you're doing your best. I just want the Bank of Uganda to look at this. The UBA came up and said, we have in Uganda 5.7 trillion syndicated loans from foreign banks.
Yes.
I don't know
the amount being exposed because of this.
I don't know whether in the supervision of these banks, the supervision department has come across these loans. Do we know their structure? Do we know their mix? But doesn't that loan portfolio, 5.7, speak to a big appetite for loans, for borrowing from banks here? If it does, why is it that Bank of Uganda still allows local banks, foreign-owned local banks, to have very small capital? Okay, I've been told one bank has 700 billion, but you'll find that that bank has got a foreign loan component, maybe of $200 million. So, as a regulator, my question would be, why do we allow our local banks or banks operating here to be so undercapitalized so that the money has got to come from their parent banks, from foreign lenders, and yet we can do like many other countries, have increased the share capital level of the local banks so that the borrowing and lending can be done here, so that the economy benefits, more jobs and more taxes and so on. And the argument always has been that, look, Uganda is risky, that's why they cannot risk their capital here. But how come they can risk to lend as foreign lenders and still the money comes here and we pay back? So I think on the side of the regulator, as he said, they are open to ideas and they can improve. This is an area where we would even not have had this case if Bank of Uganda had maintained a sufficient capital threshold, okay? Capital adequacy to a level which is big enough. Maybe DTB Uganda would have handled this transaction here. We will not be here discussing illegality. So can the capital go up? Lastly, to the regulator again, they issued a statement. I don't want to go so much into it. It has some very interesting arguments. We don't touch private money. We don't regulate foreign banks. I don't know if Mr. Manzi is allowed to speak again, but how then do they perform their core function of ensuring monetary stability? I hear,
touching.
You know, lay people will hear, anybody will hear, the dollar has gone up, so Bank of Uganda has put some more dollars. So how do you regulate the exchange rate?
You want him to respond to that?
Yes, if he can. How do you maintain monetary stability? If you issue a statement
Manzi,
and say
Manzi, in 30 seconds.
For me, I don't.
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening.
Council Mwema is challenging you on a point you raised. I know we are supposed to be out of here. It's already Thursday. But Council Mwema is challenging you on something you said in just 1 minute.
Do I repeat? Or
okay, thank you, Charles.
Did you get the point? Did you get the question?
No, I believe what the council said was that based on our statement, he disagreed with our statement where we said something interesting, that we do not regulate privately owned funds. Now, and that is true. However, I would like to remind the council that the same law allows us to define or categorize new forms of activities as financial institution business. So that's one. Two, in terms of how we ensure monetary policy, like I believe Edison referred to it, we have got a rather elaborate system and model where we track the movements of funds and funds flow throughout the economy. And in particular, one of the key indicators that we watch very closely is the rate of depreciation or rate of appreciation of the exchange rate. Okay? There are certain triggers that we track foreign exchange, we track liquidity, which is the amount of free cash flowing through the system, and that determines when we intervene, and how we intervene. And that is how we ensure monetary stability.
Okay.
As a matter he raised on the small capital, actually, for his information, Bank of Uganda already commenced work on coming up with the new minimum capital structure for the banks, and we believe that most likely outside of this judgment and ruling, there will be an announcement either by the end of the year or early next year in terms of the new capital requirements. But on capital, I just want to clarify on one thing. The 12 billion that Edison spoke about, that is the minimum paid up capital. Like, because remember, a bank is first and foremost a company.
Yeah.
That is the minimum paid up capital. But as a bank, as you grow and make more loans, there is what we call core capital, which is your minimum paid up capital plus extra capital to be able to support the loans or the assets that you accumulate over time as you grow.
Yeah. So,
and of course, lastly, I know he says he doesn't agree with our statement, and that is very well within his right. But we shall wait and see what the appellant court comes up with. In the interim, yes, there are some lessons for us arising out of this ruling, and we have already begun internal discussions in terms of what we can do, like just as what we can do both in the interim but over and outside, whether or not there is an appellate process.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
Now wind up.
The executive director is quite open and progressive, and I'm sure if I sat with him and we looked at their statement, he will privately agree with certain things. There are issues.
As a counsel,
I will not go into the law now.
It's actually your duty to advise him.
Yes, if we sat, he will be able to see. But for now, he's doing his best.
Okay.
And I think that is what we need. But in conclusion, he only made one snide remark about credibility, and he said you can see foreigners and locals. Please, you know, this is the problem. That's why I told you that if Diamond Trust Bank Uganda was a Ugandan-owned bank, if it was Ugandan-owned, it would have been closed because of this issue. I can bet on that. Ugandan-owned banks have done lesser evil, and they are closed for small things. Under the law, Mr. Mazi knows that the contravention that Diamond Trust Bank did entitles or makes it liable to lose its license. But it has not been touched. So please, don't demonize Ugandans. They are many decent people who can do business and so on. You've closed, not given them a chance at being in the business of banking and so on. And now you have a Ugandan who is saying $23 million was lost and everybody thinks he has stolen. You know, there's that bias that we have against ourselves. And I would commend to everybody here, if you've not read the book, Why Nations Fail, a gentleman called Daron, Why Nations Fail, you will see why Africa remains the way we are, why we remain poor, why we are exploited, is because our resources, okay, are being taken out. And for us, we are clapping and thinking. So, for me, the thing that we have achieved today, I think everybody here agrees. The court never set out to ban foreign loans.
Yeah.
The court never set out to ban syndicated loans. The court set out to restate the law on foreign lending.
Yeah.
And that is the law as it is. If Mr. Mazi says we need to amend the law, that law has been there for 16 years. Mr. Mazi has been in that position a few years now. That law has been there, and it's not likely to change because it fits the international regulation of money. So when my friend Francis says, yes, we depend on tourists and so on, but he needed to add that also tourists have to declare how much money they are bringing and so on. No tourist comes here with loads of money and they allow him in. You need to declare. Everything is structured. The money is a coward. Maybe you need to add it's a regulated coward. You know, this foreign capital. We cannot therefore sit. Yes, it's a regulated coward if it is a coward. And
regulation actually can lead to fear.
All we are saying,
even fear can lead to regulation being put in
all
place.
we are saying, the definitional thing Ellison says, I didn't want to go into it a lot. I have read the fear inside out, and according to us, the court was right. What was done by Diamond Trust Bank Kenya was financial institutions business, but that is for the appeal court. The positive we should be taking out of this is that, yes, we have defined the obvious. I don't know why people are shocked. This kind of legal regime of regulating foreign lending is all over Africa, is all over the world. So I don't know what shocks Bloomberg. All those are instigated things because they also regulate. So, but some people want to put us on our knees so that they can bring money and take out without us earning a penny. So that's why you
By the way, how much did Kenya earn out of this? Did Uganda earn any amount in this transaction? Uganda government?
4.5.
Yes.
I asked the UBA to declare how much taxes.
Did Uganda get any money out of this transaction?
Which one?
The transaction of HAM and DTB and DTB, between DTB and DTB.
But by the way, this is not the only transaction that HAM has had, as I've explained.
No, leave alone HAM. I mean between Diamond Trust Bank Kenya and Diamond Trust Bank Uganda. Was there some money that Uganda earned?
Of course they earn. Arrangement fees.
We earned,
and all those. No. That is money earned by Diamond Trust Bank Uganda. But in terms of taxes, if there was any interest paid against the money from Kenya, my position, Francis thinks otherwise, is that there was a tax component. Okay, there was some withholding tax. Now, I am thinking that this case should open up these foreign loans so that we find out if the National Treasury has earned any money.
Okay, good. Gentlemen, I can't thank you.
Charles, I'd like to make a small comment before you go.
Yes, Manzi.
Charles, can I?
You don't want us to sleep. For you are at home just going straight to your bed after this. These gentlemen have to...
I just want to make a comment on this.
Yes.
I just want to correct Council Mwema.
Yeah.
Why he says that only the arrangement fees were earned by Diamond Trust Bank Uganda, I think he is being rather disingenuous, and I'll tell you why. The money that was advanced to his client, the client presumably invested that money in his many businesses. It paid people's salaries, which salaries come with the pay as you earn. He bought goods in Uganda, or brought goods into Uganda, where he paid VAT. So yes, indeed, government of Uganda did earn from that transaction. I think let's be very clear on that one.
Okay.
Those are other forms of taxation.
Thanks a lot, gentlemen. The discussion has been interesting, no doubt. Council Mwema, the other ones were very hard questions, but Frank Gashumba says you are for World Cup.
So he can give me a prize.
And you love football. So when someone says you are for World Cup, you understand. But to all of you, Rashid, someone called Rashid says, very good discussion. Thanks to all the gentlemen. You have really gotten us glued. I think that the amendments to the Financial Institutions Act by BOU are long overdue. That's what Rashid says. But thank you so much. I have to say that, you know, we have been enjoying coffee from Uganda Coffee Development Authority, and thanks for serving us coffee and for joining behind the headlines on UBC to be part of the evening. Our poll opinion question that can continue on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. The opinion poll question is, how should DTB and Hamis Chigundu solve their transaction dispute? You can continue the discussion online and off the screen because we are ending now. I want to thank so much the panel, Council Mwema, for the case and for taking it thus far and opening our eyes and for engaging us in this discussion. I want to thank so much Council Ellison Karuhanga for coming and for engaging and giving us your knowledge, sharing with us. Thanks so much, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, the only panel member permanent that we had today. You put up a good fight amidst the challenge from coming from Council Mwema. And to Mr. Francis Kamulegea, thank you so much. And I wish we could have these debates on the economy regularly and to taste the health of the economy, especially with a man like Manzi, Tune Manzi, Tumubweine. Thank you so much for finding time amidst your difficult schedules to be with us, and we cannot thank you more than this. To the rest of the team here at UBC for making this show possible, my producers, Maurice, William, Ivan, Bills, and the entire team, Fred, and the rest, thank you so much. And to the camera people, thank you so much. God bless you all. Until next week, we are already in the Thursday. Good morning.
Children are a special gift, one we must protect and nurture with care. Ensuring your child has a birth certificate opens doors for them that would otherwise be hard to access, such as immunization, school admission, or simply proving their age and belonging. Let us do our duty as parents and guardians by registering our children and getting them birth certificates. For more information, visit the NERA office closest to you or call the toll-free number 0800-211-700. This message is brought to you by NERA.
Welcome to Fundamental Media Limited, your trusted business partner. We specialize and deal in print media, national and private anniversaries, sector review of government bodies, special handbooks for ministries and private organizations, online advertising on our website, public relations, general printing and designing. Find us at Nalia Namugongo Road or call us on 0776 498 321 or 0705 699 161. Fundamental Media, beyond borders.
Worlds apart, we choose to look for common ground.
A dark industry comes to life in Los Angeles every night. Dozens of women sell their bodies on the street, many of them underage. Los Angeles police reveal a taste of their daily challenge.
You know, if you're going to exploit a child here in Los Angeles, then we're going to come after you.
See officers going undercover as sex workers and customers to fight the LA sex trade.
evening. Welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter LaBelle. As the election approaches, we feel it's necessary to ask a very simple, though important question. Why do most potential voters describe themselves as independent or not affiliated with a political party? On top of this, poll after